The two things that make Spider-Man Miles Morales so fun to play, as with the original Spider-Man game, are the wild cinematography and the fight choreography. Insomniac Games' creative team really understands how to best use the tools at its disposal to infuse energy and excitement into the game's core: action. This might make the new Spider-Man game sound like a movie, but after all, they're both primarily visual entertainment. Speaking of movies, Spider-Man Miles Morales owes part of its existence to the Oscar-winning Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which released in the same year as the previous game. It even pays tribute to that by including Miles' movie suit and mimicking Into the Spider-Verse's look. That means animating in twos and worlds that pop up as Miles punches and hits enemies. The Spider-Verse suit is in fact two mods that can be applied to any suit in the game. Another fun suit in Spider-Man Miles Morales is the Bodega Cat suit, which comes with a cat in a backpack. The cat stays in the bag for the most part, no pun intended, and jumps out for finisher moves. But only when it feels like, which is a bit fitting given most cats are lazy. And oh, the cat is also called Spider-Man. I once called it the best thing about Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Insomniac seemingly agrees, for the Bodega Cat suit is only unlocked after you finish the campaign. Ah, the campaign. Set about a year after the events of Spider-Man, Spider-Man Miles Morales transports us to winter New York, the city you know, now covered in a blanket of snow. For those wondering, snow doesn't affect gameplay in any way. It's just a look. Following his father's death, Miles and his mother Rio Morales have moved back to Harlem, where the Roxxon Energy Corporation is building a new reactor that claims to work on clean fuel. Miles discovers that their purposes might be more nefarious, and he begins to probe into Roxxon, with help from his software developer best friend Gank Lee, who's to Miles as Ned is to Peter in the ongoing Spider-Man film series, an in-ear sidekick. Spider-Man Miles Morales also features a gender-swapped Tinkerer, previously part of Vulture's outfit in Spider-Man Homecoming, as the leader of a new high-tech criminal outfit called the Underground, and some memorable villains returning in supporting or guest capacity. Unlike Peter Parker, who was in the Spider-Man business for 8 years when his game began, Miles is still learning, with Peter showing him the ropes. Yes, Peter has a new face thanks to a controversial move by Insomniac Games. But after Peter leaves for Europe with MJ on a daily bugle assignment, Miles is left in charge as New York's only Spider-Man. Miles is also discovering his powers, with the likes of Venom Punch and Camouflage unlocking as you progress in the game. The story isn't anything special, but it's relevant in how it speaks to police brutality and discrimination against minorities. Spider-Man Miles Morales also places emphasis on the community and family aspect. While Pete is a bit of a loner, Miles is embraced by the people around him, who take to calling him our Spider-Man. It's not a long game though. The campaign took us less than 10 hours to wrap up, with a healthy dose of side quests and activities. But the latter aren't interesting and feel repetitive, in some cases hilariously. As Peter, Marvel's Spider-Man made you clear construction sites controlled by Wilson Fisk. The Underground is now squatting there, and as Miles, you have to clear out the construction sites again. You could make an argument about power vacuums and all that, but this is still uninspired game design. The only actual new side activity is sound sampling, which requires Miles to locate where a particular sound is coming from to help create an album he's working on. Miles' interest in music is carried over from the comics, and the game fittingly has a hip-hop soundtrack, though it's no match for the Into the Spider-Verse. Virtually everything else about Spider-Man Miles Morales, good or bad, is drawn from Marvel's Spider-Man. The swinging is as exciting and on-note as it was, though Miles has his own style that fits his wild spirit and flailing out-of-control nature from the comics, a glimpse of which we got in the Spider-Verse movie. Its photo mode expands on the original one, adding light sources and stickers to the mix, but the Batman Arkham-inspired stealth mechanics are still not convincing on Spider-Man Miles Morales. While the Dark Knight only operated in shadows, Spider-Man trots about in broad daylight. More importantly, he's not detected when he probably should be. Sure, you cannot see someone directly above you, but the farther they are, the easier it becomes. Many a time an enemy could easily spot Miles, or the hanging trap bodies of their teammates, if they looked up even like 5 to 10 degrees. While sneaking around has its own pleasures, Spider-Man Miles Morales is at its best when you jump into the middle. Yes, it's more chaotic and in turn riskier, but it's also quicker. Add to that the reasons we mentioned at the beginning. Lacking in originality, but thankfully built on a solid core that needs a few tweaks, Spider-Man Miles Morales is essentially like a standalone expansion to Marvel Spider-Man. Insomniac agrees that it's not a full-fledged title, which is why it's priced at $50 as opposed to $60 for the original. But Sony has botched pricing in India. Spider-Man Miles Morales costs 4,000 rupees, same as Marvel Spider-Man 2 years ago. That is absurd. Miles Morales is a successful expansion of Insomniac's Spider-Man universe, but it's a new paragraph rather than a new chapter. Hopefully it will give us the latter next time around. Maybe even a Spider-Gwen or a Spider-Verse game. We can dream, right? Thanks for watching. For more gaming news and reviews, follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Gadgets360.